Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to our Bicep community call of September 2025. We have some good content here today, some cool feedback options. We're always asking for feedback, and we think this is a really great place to get it. It seems like everyone's very active in chat, in the comments as well, in the YouTube videos, and always helpful to get more opinions and GitHub issues. So let's dive right into it. Version 0.38, the release date is soon. Don't have an exact date. We're hoping to get it rolled out soon in the next couple of days, if not next week. Not a definitive promise, but we're trying to get this out as soon as possible. We're waiting on a PR too. All right, so one of our biggest highlights for this release is the load directory file info function that was actually created by an external contributor. There's been an issue open for this with a lot of asks for a couple of years that one of our contributors decided to tackle, which was really a big undertaking. He's been committing several PRs recently, and we really appreciate the work he's been able to help with. I think his name is Gabriel. Not 100% sure. I only know his GitHub alias. We'll come back to this slide, but I wanted to quickly jump to the next slide to explain the function. So the goal of load directory file info is to be able to return information about each file in a specified directory. In this instance, the function is able to return an array of objects for each file in the directory. So this code sample here shows how to call the function with the option to use wildcards. Each object that gets returned contains base name as the file name, extension as the file's extension, and relative path returning the path relative to the template calling the function. We're going to write up some docs about this. Please hold for those. There's some documentation that we're a little delayed on getting all of the documentation out for new features. So we'll make sure to get that out as soon as possible and give you more information on how to use this. And yeah. Going back a slide. So with the first implementation of load directory file info function, forgot to mention, it doesn't support any load content functions. So we don't have that in the plans anytime soon, but if you feel really strongly about wanting to use those functions, feel free to contribute it a PR, just like this contributor, or you can open an issue and just give it a thumbs up for visibility so we can make sure to prioritize it correctly. For our second one, we added a validate director. The idea was brought up by John Lokers, one of our favorite active Bicep contributors. The decorator allows you to add validation logic to a type property, parameter, output, and have the deployment fail if the expression described is false. Our engineer, Johnny, who implemented this, will give a quick demo on it later. So yeah, keep in mind, this is experimental, so it requires the user-defined constraints flag. For the next item, we have removed the experimental flag for module identity, which we briefly talked about in May. It enables the identity property to modules, allowing you to add user-assigned identities to a module. And our fourth one on the list, we added an MCP tool to list AVM metadata, which includes documentation URI for each module. Our engineer, Gary Lee, will also give a demo with a longer explanation on this later as well. I also wanted to call out our community contributors for this month. We really appreciate all of the features, bug fixes, and linter role implementations that come from our community each month. So I wanted to give a little shout out to all of you guys. For the first item, Bicep is now able to decompile desired state configuration names for those who use this experimental feature. The second one was completed by the same user and fixes a bug that returns an error when a user attempts to decompile a parameter file into a Bicep param file with an unused name. The error that gets returned states that the file already exists, which is incorrect, and the issue is now fixed and will decompile successfully. If this explanation doesn't make sense, please let me know. I can try to explain it a little further. The PR itself has a really good visual explanation of what it does. Our last community contribution fixes an issue brought up of the no hard-coded environment URL linter rule. It triggered on the description field for parameters, and now it excludes all metadata. Again, thank you for undertaking this. I know we don't always have time for all of the linter rules and bug fixes, and we really appreciate when community members feel really strongly about something and want to fix it. All right, that's everything on O.38. Any questions? I'm looking at that right now. Is any type added to the release, or is it expected next month? Not 100% sure about this. I don't know if Anthony's here who can answer that.
Oh,
I'm here,
can
but
answer
I think
that
Johnny,
one.
yeah, go for it.
Okay, great.
So we were waiting on a backend rollout, and that looks like it's completed. So we should be able to get that one into this release.
That sounds great. Thanks, Johnny. Thanks, John, for calling out the validate decorator. We really appreciate you bringing that up. Will this release contain fix for publishing modules with source that contains graph extension? I'm not 100% sure if I understand this question, but Shanglong.
Is there a GitHub issue, maybe?
Yes, there is a good issue. When you publish a module that has the graph extension with source, it fails.
Yeah, this is something I'm planning to fix.
Okay.
And yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Shanglong. Awesome. I think that was all the questions that came up during this slide, so we can move on to the next one.
Actually, one thing I wanted to just
Oh.
mention, Stephanie,
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
there was a question about user-assigned identities. I think one thing to point out here is like, although the capability is there, I don't think it can actually be used for any kind of practical purposes today. So it's more functionality that's there, should we need to use identities in the future.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Anthony. Oh, it looks like Shanglong said it's already fixed. The bug where source files with extensions cannot be published.
Yeah, I just realized I fixed it earlier.
Okay, great. Sounds good. Anything else before we move on? All right, PC, take it away.
Sure. Can you go on to the next slide? So this isn't the easiest update to share, but it is an important one. We have made the decision to deprecate the ARM2's extension for Visual Studio Code starting October 1st, 2025. The extension has been in maintenance mode for some time, but with recent shifts in priorities, we've taken a hard look at where we can deliver the most value. Supporting this extension at the level it deserves is no longer feasible. And rather than let it degrade, we are choosing the responsible path forward. This change will allow us to focus our energy on Bicep, where we are seeing strong momentum and can make the biggest impact. Now, if you still need the extension, you can still manually install it using the V6 package I've included here. Yeah, the link is included on the slide, and I can also post it in chat.
All right, thanks, PC. Are there any questions on this? I'll give it a couple seconds.
Yes, I have a question. So because this is a big thing that's going to happen, is this going to be announced in the, in the Azure Bicep or ARM template channel so that end users know about that?
Yes, absolutely. So we're planning on announcing it when it deprecates to our channels. Is there any specific channel that you think that is closely followed that we should make sure to share?
I think across Microsoft channels where we talk about infrastructure as a code, that needs to be announced, because this is ARM templates. Yes, it's not the latest, so to speak, tool and latest technology we have, but it is core technology that's still in use.
That makes sense. Yeah, we'll look into, I guess we still have 3 weeks. We'll figure out how best to announce it to everyone, I think before then, just to give a little heads up.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I think that's really important to share. All right. Any other questions on this? Cool. We can move on. Johnny.
Sure. Let me share my screen. That's not working.
We could see your editor there.
Oh, well, I couldn't. I'm not sure what is happening when Teams shows me a black box and everybody else can see what I'm trying to share. Okay, can everybody see the editor now?
Yes, there is a black box at the top and on the side.
Yeah.
I think that's fine.
Okay.
Could you maybe zoom in a little bit?
Yes. Okay. So for this feature, this is mostly backend, but we do have some completion support in Bicep. Um, just up front, you'll need to have this feature flag user-defined constraints enabled in bicep config.json. So for a user-defined constraint, these would be used when you have a value that doesn't fit neatly into existing constraints. So we have some built-in constraints for primitive type. So if you have like a parameter and you call it less than 10, and that is an integer, you can ask us to enforce this at runtime. So we'll say max value 9. And this will influence the how the bicep compiler you backend parameter.
Johnny, I think your audio is cutting out a little bit there. I'm not sure if it's just me.
No, I think I
Uh,
missed the last maybe 5 seconds, 5 to 10 seconds.
Okay, did it come back, or I'll try leaning closer to the microphone if that was the problem?
It did come back. Maybe if you could restart 10 seconds ago.
Oh, okay, so we have some built-in validators like min value, max value. For strings and arrays, we have min length, max length, but these don't cover all use cases. So what we added is a parameter called a decorator called validate. So if you wanted to say have an even parameter, and you wanted to make sure that this gets enforced at runtime. So the ARM backend will check, like, make sure this parameter is even. You can pass in a lambda, and this has to return true or false. And if it returns true, then everything is hunky dory. And if it returns false, then we'll raise an error. You can pass in a second parameter here. Okay. The other thing that you can do is in these lambdas, you can refer to other parameters, variables, same as you would be able to in other lambdas that you use elsewhere in the template. The one thing that you can't refer to is runtime values, so like properties of a resource or outputs of a module. One limitation, and this is the main reason this is still experimental, is that we aren't actually able to check this at compile time now. It does get checked at runtime, but just not at compile time. So if you were to so for our built-in validator, when we said less than 10, if we pass in 10, if we pass in 10, we'll get a diagnostic that says, no, this is wrong because maximum is 9. But if we pass in something that doesn't match the lambda predicate, diagnostic for now. We're still working on that, and once that's in place, then we should be able to lift the experimental flag. But okay, that is what I have for this. Back to you, Stephanie.
Thanks, Johnny. Your voice did cut out a couple of times, but I think we understand the whole gist of it. There are a couple of questions in chat, so let me call them out. So John asked, in this case, x equals the value of even, right? Just like we have in the map function.
I think this was a
Yes,
question about the syntax you were showing, Johnny, the first example.
Yeah, so the thing that you pass into the validate decorator, it's a lambda that takes one parameter, and that parameter will be the value of what is being validated. There is some type checking there, so we'll make sure that if you attach a validate decorator to an int, that your lambda makes sense for an int parameter, or for a string, or vice versa.
Hope that answers your question, John. Okay, that is clear.
And then I saw a question from Nathan. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. This runtime check will also run in what if. And Andreas asked, do we have full regex support? And unfortunately, we don't. We're kind of blocked here just because due to limitations in the .NET platform, we can't accept and execute untrusted regexes on untrusted input quite yet. But we are still working towards that one.
One last question from Stan. I'm not sure if it's related to what you demoed, but is this based on fail? The fail function?
It's not based on fail. The semantics are maybe similar, but it doesn't compile to fail. It has a unique representation in the template.
Okay, cool. Sounds like you answered his question. Any other questions before we move on? All right, I'll quickly share my screen, but I think it would be turned over quickly. So Gary.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, great. Yeah, let me share my screen. All right. Yeah, so like last month, we released a couple of MCP tools. And then with the most recent release, we published like one more MCP tool, which works with the AVMs. So that is called the list AVM metadata. What it does is to list all the up-to-date AVM modules, like versions and their metadata, and then basically within the VS Code, or like other kind of MCP client, it can work by retrieving all the schema. So yeah, here's just like a show of what I have locally. So what I have is just like the built-in tools and the Bicep MCP server. So with that, let's just try like a very simple prompt. So for example, let's say generate a Bicep file to create a key vault using AVM. And I'll say, yeah, make sure to use the latest module version.
Do you mind zooming in at all? I don't know if you're able to.
Sure, I can. Yeah, I already did, but I can do that one more time. Is this okay?
Yeah, that looks
So
great.
for now, I'll
Thanks.
make this bigger. So yeah, as you can see, so basically, the first of all is using the get best practice tool, which yeah I mentioned earlier we released last month, and then it's yeah running the new tool to retrieve all the AVM metadata. And then what is also doing underneath is using the built-in fetch tool, which is pretty handy. It would just read the content of this like documentation URL of this particular AVM module. So yeah, so for now, I just keep this. Let's take a quick look at the file generated. Yeah, so this is a pretty straightforward, just using basically like the required parameters. So what we can do is also we can say show me all the optional yeah, I'll say just modify it. So yeah, so sometimes it may be able to kind of make some mistake, but yeah, it will be able to, because with the help of some other built-in tool, it will be able to identify any of the like the linter error, any error that's happening on the editor, and then basically fix by itself. So in this case, it worked pretty well. Yeah, because yeah, like underneath is really getting all the schema data for this AVM modules, and then it's able to like show us all the optional parameters. Yeah, that's pretty much all for the demo. So please like just try it out and then give us the any feedback. Do we have anyone has any questions?
There was a question from Joel in the chat. I have the experimental version of the Bicep MCP already installed. How do I upgrade to this version, which includes AVM support?
I think it's just the latest version. The I forgot the version number.
For Bicep?
Do you mean the nightly build, Gary?
No, not the nightly build. I think this is like really GA'd, right? It's not the nightly build version.
We haven't completed the 0.38 release yet, so if this was contributed in the last month, I think it's probably going to be in the upcoming release.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah. So sorry about that. I think I was having this like the kind of a local version. That's why, yeah, probably using like kind of custom built version. Yeah, so it will be released. Yeah, because yeah, you should be able to use the nightly build version. Otherwise, we'll just basically wait for the next release. Yeah, sorry about the confusion.
No worries. Thanks, Gary. Any other questions? All right. We could move on to the next topic. I'll share the PowerPoint, but I think it also will be turned over quickly. Emily?
Thanks, Stephanie. Yeah, so we're doing this one just after Gary's demo. So Gary demoed a new MCP tool for list ABM, but we have 3 existing experimental MCP tools already that we presented at the last call, and they've been out into the world for about a month now. So I thought it'd be a great time to just take a few moments and either in chat or live share a bit of feedback and help us understand if you're using them, how you're using them, and if you're liking them, what else you would like to see. So to prompt the feedback, I have added in the chat 5 questions. You don't need to answer all of them or in any particular order, but just to get your brains flowing. I'll repeat them out loud for the folks who are watching the recording, and you can feel free to comment on YouTube or create a GitHub issue if you want to respond to these feedback points. If you're in the call, feel free to just add some thoughts in chat. So we're curious if you have and how often you have been using the new MCP tools in your Bicep authoring process. And then if you are using them, what use cases do you tend to use the tools for? For example, are you turning to them for complex authoring scenarios that are kind of stretching your limits of Bicep knowledge and using it to help take you a step farther? Or maybe you're using it to fix your errors when you face linter errors or errors with your scenario. Or maybe you're just using them for your simplest Bicep patterns. You find that's what they work best for, and it just helps you reduce mental energy on those simple problems. Maybe you've been having trouble getting started with the tools, in which case I've recorded a tutorial on how to get started with these experimental tools that you can find on the YouTube channel where you might be watching this call or in our chat. So if you have been having trouble, check out that tutorial and see if it helps you. There's a couple of hints and tricks in there. And then finally, we're looking for how we want to grow the server or grow these tools. And so we're curious what added context or tools have you been missing or looking for within the Bicep skill set? And finally, where you want to access these tools. As you know, they're in experimental now. And so we have some flexibility and we want some feedback as to where these would be most helpful for you. And so today, these Bicep tools live within our Bicep VS Code extension and within the GitHub Copilot the GitHub Copilot within VS Code. But if you're familiar with MCP, there are a few other ways to have a server. For example, there's local servers, remote servers, and we just want to put kind of an ask out into the world of if you could design the server yourself, how would you like to get access to it and access to the tools? If you have any questions, this is also a great time to ask them. But otherwise, I'll just let folks take some time to either speak out loud or in the chat. And John, I see your question. You can definitely provide feedback in a GitHub issue. If you have any feature requests or recommendations, that would be awesome and would be easy to refer back to. So it might be the easiest way. But if you have some quick thoughts that you want addressed in the call, or you just want to put in the chat for discussion with others, feel free to use this Teams call chat too. Thanks, Jeremy, for sharing what you're using the tools for. Yeah, go for it. Bernie?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I would find it just when I've been doing some demos with customers and things like that, and I think the ability to use the Bicep CLI and just like run it with an MCP argument would be helpful, just because like if you run it inside like the GitHub hosted agent and things like that, then obviously being able to call the tool as a command line is sort of helpful, as opposed to just being shipped in the extension, which isn't really available from a server side running a container type scenario. So just a thought, but yeah, interested in what other people think too.
Yeah, I appreciate that feedback, Bernie. That's a good use case to be aware of. Have other folks found themselves in the same scenario?
Just wanted to share that, like, on our side, I think one thing that we're still trying to figure out is, Copilot's abilities are evolving, and sometimes I think there's a conflict between, do you put this into the MCP server, or is the Copilot just able to use the existing tools to figure things out? Like Bernie, to your point, something I've seen that's interesting is like assigning GitHub Copilot to an issue, it's somehow able to discover to call the Bicep CLI by itself. So sometimes I wonder, like, is that something we actually need to provide through the MCP server, or is that something we should just expect to be built into Copilot? So curious to get your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I think I guess the cool thing about MCP servers is that really they do come like front and center of like when the like a Copilot runs. I find that then yes, it might do a Bicep build, and there's probably enough documentation out there, especially with like the Microsoft Docs, that it's then going to try the Bicep build. But I think like some of the commands that you've like added are super valuable because it's like really hard for it to work out what is the latest version of a module, especially if it's hosted on like the Bicep public registry. It's got probably no clue on what it is. So I think the tools that you're currently adding are pretty helpful in my opinion. I think the feedback from customers that I've sort of seen as well is that then they're really good. So yeah, I guess keep on doing that. And those discovery points around the Bicep registry and things like that, I think are key to sort of unlocking some of those capabilities, in my opinion.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thanks, Bernie. That's great.
I want to echo Joel Miller put a comment in there that says using MCP for anything I can. That's pretty much what I do too, is I'll use that MCP and say, hey, I want to create a template, a resource template for this specific Bicep file, use the latest version of the release, and it'll spit something out for me. And that and it's in and of itself is a huge time saver for me. So that is something that I love about that MCP server and Copilot.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. Thanks for sharing, Jeremy. Cool. Well, I want to make sure there's time for the rest of the presentation. So please keep adding to the chat or GitHub issues if you have more to share. Want to grow this into something that's helpful for you. And of course, appreciate hearing positive feedback as well as we figure out a pathway for these tools.
Great. Thanks, Emily. Really appreciate it. And thanks everyone in the chat and who came off mute. We love getting feedback. We definitely use it all the time. So as Emily mentioned, if there's any feedback or anything else you want to share, you can always open a GitHub issue as well. Yeah. Anything else on this topic? Any other questions, comments? All right, we can move forward. Another call for feedback. So we are close to getting a lot of the issues with bicep preams addressed. One thing that came up that a lot of people would like support for is basically allowing you to omit parameters in the bicep param file so that you could supply it at deploy time. We came up with a design in which you can use the inline function. Thank you, Engin. But we have some questions that we wanted to ask based off of use case because we realized that this implementation is going to be a little bit more difficult and more, I guess, just more difficult than we originally thought. So we have basically two options: one to have a temporary solution, and one to delay this feature for another semester. So, but we'll be able to cover every single use case. Anyway, I'll go into it. So basically right now the inline function, we wanted to create a new decorator that allows you to omit parameter definition values in the bicep param file and supply it in the command line. I have some examples here. The CLI argument would look like this. We haven't fully decided on what it would look like. We're trying to look into if we want to put it in the parameters or the inline command. And what the proposed solution would look like this, where you assign the inline function to a parameter, and then you would supply the name in the command line. So we found that with a simple solution that we could probably implement sometime soon, it can only be used in a direct assignment to a parameter. Anything else would be blocked. So for example, if you even want to just reference the parameter into another parameter, that won't work. Any other functions like toLower or concatenation would also not work. So it would be really good to understand whoever wants this function, if it's absolutely necessary to be able to use the parameter in any other part of their file. Otherwise, we can probably try to implement this soon if the limited abilities are okay with you guys. That being said, I will put a link to the issue in chat so you guys can share there, if not just in this call. Like I said, the other option, if the limited abilities are not really useful to you, we have been looking into Bicep CLI commands in general, and it's going to be a bigger feature in the future, but we really want to do some digging and some investigation on what that would look like. We could include this function there, and it would be able to be supported in all of these ways. But that would take a longer time. So we want to understand if right now the limited abilities would be good enough. Okay, so there's a question in chat. Inline only works if it's specifically specified as inline, no chance of overwriting. I'm not sure if Engin is here. What was your, oh, Engin is not here.
So, if like I wanted to override the dupe environment on the command line, I can't do that unless I specify inline. You say parameter in, so I don't understand what this is showing. So you say inline foo equals bar. Is
yes,
that supposed to be env?
That's supposed to be env.
Yeah, so that's saying that env equals bar from the command line, but I could not put inline dupe environment equals. Well, so how are you assigning, are those variable? Oh, okay. So like if I had a second parameter called env2, if I didn't specify inline on it, I could not put it on the inline command line.
You couldn't call the environment variable that was specified as inline because it is going to be assigned at compile time. You won't be able to reference it. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I guess it's fine. We'll see how it fleshes out.
Okay. Sounds good. And yeah, the CLI argument, I should have updated this, but this would look like env equals whatever value you want to put in there.
I think parameters in general are overridable, right? So if I did param env hard-coded value, I believe that is overridable on the CLI today.
Yes. Yes.
And so this is just an explicit, like if you really don't want to provide a value, you can use this inline functionality. So you should, I think, Chris, be able to do what you want, but I might be misunderstanding something.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's just confusing because it looks like the only one that can be overridden is env if you had 3 parameters. But yeah, for some reason I thought you could always do that. So yeah, Alex, thanks.
Cool.
Yeah, I think
so. This is just
clarify,
specifying. This is just specifying that env has to be supplied from the command line.
Yep, exactly. I think that's the main thing that inline adds is also like defining a required parameter that must be overridden.
So the caveat here is that if we do it the easy way, then any parameter that is provided at the command line can't be referenced in other parameters.
For this specific use case. So if you specifically define the parameter with the inline function, then yes. But if you assign it any other value, then it could be used anywhere else in the template.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Okay. I can live with that.
Yeah, no, this
Okay.
is fine. This looks great.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for the feedback and for the clarifying questions. It really helps. Sometimes I feel like I'm not explaining very well. Definitely ask as many questions as possible. Again, to everyone else who is watching the recording or may have any last-minute questions or comments, please go to the issue 10454 and put your comments there. Okay, let's move on to the next topic. Sydney?
Hello, everyone. Alrighty. Give me 1 second to get my screen ready. But I was asked to look at our process today around how we kind of factor in upvotes into our triage and decision-making process. And then as I was reading the comments about that, I felt like it really tied into the process of community PRs and how that works. So I wrote up just some notes outlining my initial thoughts on how this could work. And I wanted to use today to get some feedback on this process to see if it makes sense to folks or if there are any concerns. So I will share my screen, but FYI, this is in notes draft kind of format. So we'll rock with that. We'll hide my desktop. Okay. And let me just make this a little bit bigger for folks. All right, so this is particularly talking about the GitHub kind of triaging process. So let's say I have an idea of a change that should be made in Bicep, and this could be either a bug fix or a feature request. So step one is to, or step zero sort of, is to search on the GitHub repo to see if an issue already exists. If an issue doesn't already exist, step one is to open one. If the issue does already exist, step would be to comment on it, etc. To add your perspective. So as we go through the Bicep triage process, we triage typically once a week on Wednesdays. So if you're an active user of the repo, you've probably noticed this. So if we have planned work in this area, like let's say we are going to get it into the 0.39 release, we will add it to that milestone. In that case, we're kind of signing up for that work and we're hoping to get it into that release. If we're unsure if this change should or should not be made, if we are unsure if this feature belongs in Bicep or not, we can add some various tags to communicate that. So needs repro type of tag would mean that we weren't able to reproduce the bug or issue, or we need some more context to understand what was happening there. Needs upvote would mean that we understand the issue that's being described, but we're not sure. We want more of a pulse on from the community on whether or not it feels important to folks. And then like needs discussion would be opening up the issue to more of a discussion and looking for feedback from folks as well on the issue at hand. So needs upvote and needs discussion can go hand in hand as well. If we agree that this issue may be appropriate for Bicep, but needs some design work or thought into what the implementation might actually look like, we can add the needs design label. And then finally, like if we do not believe a change is needed or should happen at all in Bicep, we'll close out the issue and add a comment kind of explaining why we took that position. So then the next step would be, say I have my issue created. We got to the phase of needs design. In that case, if I am passionate about this issue, I'll go ahead and add some design thoughts in the comments of the issue. Once a design is added, or once any of these sort of like tags are responded to, we will re-triage the issue. Once the design is kind of like in a good place, we will add a contribution wanted type of tag. There's also a possibility where like this design step is sort of skipped if it's like a relatively straightforward bug fix or feature where we don't feel like a design is needed. So once it gets to a contribution wanted stage, you can go ahead and open a PR and we'll work with you on that. I think a key part of this is like, how does the needs upvote influence our decision making? So I'm sure you've heard us say this type of thing before, but our number one priority for Bicep is going to be that it's a stable platform that helps you meet your security, quality, and compliance goals for your organization. So all that is kind of a jargony way to say that Bicep is going to be like a quality-driven project. And so we take very seriously every contribution, and we have to balance those contributions across other compliance needs in our team. So there's no exact number of upvotes that will automatically ensure that the issue will enter a milestone, meaning our team will contribute the fix, or that a contribution is wanted. For example, if we think that there could be like it could introduce a security vulnerability to the product or something like that. But my proposal is that we set up a GitHub workflow so that every 20 upvotes an issue gets, it gets re-triaged and goes back to the start of this process for our Wednesday discussion time, so that we can keep a pulse on issues that feel really important to the community. So that is kind of my outline of the process. I don't think it introduces too many major changes, but just I noticed in our contribution guide, we don't have any sort of like process outlined today. So I will take a look at the chat. Upvote is a, yeah, thumbs up emoji would be the upvote that I was considering. Cool. I'm not seeing any other comments on this for now. Feel free to drop a comment later on if you think of something, but otherwise we can move on to the next topic, which I think is me again. Is that right, Stephanie?
That's correct.
Okay, so I'll just jump right into this one. This one may be quick or it may be long, depending on your all's thoughts. But a few months ago, I demoed the Bicep deploy GitHub action, and I'll just paste that in chat. And right now we're working on the design for adding a sort of like parallel or mirrored action into ADO. And so I wanted to take a moment to check in with folks and see if anyone had had a chance to try it out or use it and had any feedback on the Bicep deploy GitHub action. Okay, we can move on then, but do drop a note if you have any other thoughts on that. Yeah, Joe.
Yeah, sorry, I was starting to type in the chat, but realized after talk. We are using the Bicep deploy, and we just yesterday actually ran into a problem with some backwards compatibility for people who were using parameters in the form of X equals Y, which when we were using the AZCLI to deploy Bicep, we just had dash dash parameters, and there's a lot of different things dash dash parameters can take. And with the Bicep deploy action, there's no way to just specify X equals Y parameters. They have to format it as a JSON object in order to get that to work. And then, so that made their lives more difficult, because then formatting it as a JSON object, and then they had to escape quotes and then passing it all in. And especially because we're doing a remote invocation, so they had to escape the quotes again so that they could pass it as an argument into the JSON that's doing the remote call to our workflow. So if there's a possibility of adding back that format of parameter value that would be valuable.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback. Yeah, Anthony, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I did want to point out that I think we added YAML support a while ago. There are some kind of limitations to what you can do with GitHub Actions, but as closely as possible, it kind of matches the format of the other parameters. So that is another option just to mention if you're not aware of it.
I did not realize that there was YAML support now, so thank you for that.
Great. And thanks for the comments in chat as well. Alrighty, Stephanie, I'll pass things back to you.
Sounds good. Give me 1 second and I can pull it up. All right. So these are the requested updates that I grabbed from the community called GitHub issue. For wait and retry, Marcin will give a quick update. He's not in the call just yet. Just pinged him. He said he'll join in a little bit. So we could skip that until he comes. For the second one, there was a question about deleting rule collection groups from the firewall, Azure firewall policy. This was asked by Christopher Lewis. We responded to the issue and Stan gave the same answer we would recommend everyone, and that's to use deployment stacks. Yeah, Christopher, let us know. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's and I hate to say answer. This is obviously a flaw in the resource provider, because rule collection groups, while they are an object inside, the only way to reference a rule collection group as an object inside of the Azure firewall policy. It's kind of interesting if you go into the portal and look, the RCGs don't show up. If you export the template, they do show up as a single item inside, if you export the resource group. But the only way to reference them is as a child object to the Azure firewall policy, right? But unfortunately, that relationship that the rule collecting group has a parent of the policy. Policy doesn't know all, if you look at the Azure object, the Azure policy doesn't know all the RCG associated with it. So, an object in your code, it exists as a child to the VNet. These RCGs kind of exist in this weird nebulous area. Now, I understand that the stack concept is the way that you want to move forward, but that just opens up a whole can of worms with this, especially since the firewall has to be in the same resource group as the VNet it's in. And if you want to manage those separately, you're now dealing with, some things in the stack and some things out of the stack, or two deployment stacks in the same resource group, which I know is possible, but gets confusing. So I'm just wondering from a, not necessarily from a Bicep and ARM standpoint, but from a resource provider, is there a way to get the policy to know, or at least have a property that says all of this policy contains these RCGs, which is really the fundamental problem with it.
I see. I think you cut out there a couple of times for like half a second, but I think we understand the main gist of it. I'm not sure how much we can contribute to finding a solution for this other than passing it along to the resource provider. I'm not sure if anyone else on the team has anything to say about this.
I'm wondering, Chris, what is your ideal outcome for this situation?
The ideal outcome is that the policy has a collection of RCGs, because then I can control which ones are in and which ones are not.
Got it. So your ideal outcome is some sort of API adjustment.
Correct.
Okay. I think we're happy to connect the dots and share this feedback with that team, like Stephanie was saying. I just don't know how much more influence, again, like Stephanie was saying,
it's not
able to have.
I mean, it's certainly not a Bicep or an ARM issue.
Yeah.
The provider's just a little screwy.
do you feel like you have the resources to share the feedback with them, or do you want help getting the feedback
Oh
to
no,
them?
I can. I just don't know how to communicate to the RP groups.
Got it. If I'd suggest, if you haven't already, you may have share what your ideal outcome is with us, and then we can loop in the RP owners and they can comment.
Do the RP owners have like, I mean, how's the general communication to that? I mean, I used to post this in the Azure Connect program, which, you know, kind of disappeared.
My maybe a little too unfiltered opinion is there's not great methods to get feedback to the resource provider team, so we act as a proxy for them, for better or for worse.
Agreed.
And it's probably your best bet is just to go through us. I don't
Okay.
know of a better way.
You guys do yeoman's work. It's awesome.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, we closed out that issue, but we can reopen it. Just provide a little bit more information that you provided here, and we'll make sure that we could get it to the right people. Oh, and Angel, yeah, Angel said you could send him a mail to discuss it as well. So lots of options here. We do want to help you. Like, we wish there wasn't this issue and we wish we could do something about it, but this is the best we can do.
Yep, sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Marcin, I see you're here. Do you want to give an update to the wait and retry?
Yeah, so we are working on the backend basically the backend implementation for both wait and retry functionality. I expect like in a couple of in 1 or 2 Bicep releases, we should have the feature working end to end. We will most likely keep the experimental flag. Then, we will just announce that the feature is okay to use now. The experimental feature is okay to use now. And then we'll basically wait a couple of releases for basically to collect feedback, and then it'll probably go GA. And we'll take off the experimental from the feature and then just make it enabled by default. So that's the current update for wait and retry.
Cool. Thanks, Marcin. If you have any questions, put them in chat or raise your hand. We could go on to the last update, simplifying resource referencing. There's been a lot of talk on this one. We've been talking about it internally as well for planning out Bicep 1.0. Sydney, I think you should have the best context here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't have a super exciting update here, other than that this work is sort of sequenced after other work that we're looking at in the module space and scoping space, just based on the code and the implementation of how resource referencing could work. So right now we're in the middle of semester planning and we're figuring out what we can slot into our next semester. But my hope is that we can find time to do the work on module representation and scoping that would enable us to solve this issue. So no timeline right now, but we haven't forgotten about it either.
Thank you. Any other questions on that? All right, we can cover any questions. Let me look through here. So David Pazdera just asked, where could I channel a feature request? You guys, GitHub Engineering, some other team, for enabling support for Bicep modules and MCR in GitHub Dependabot, so that you could be notified when there's a new AVM module published in MCR. I'm not. I think at the very least, you could create a GitHub issue and we could direct it to the right people. But
So this is a question about Dependabot specifically, right? I think.
Yes, it is.
I believe they have I believe that you can raise issues against Dependabot, and if you want to send an issue raised our way, we can also see if we can follow up internally on it. I think it's a good idea.
Great, sounds good. Thanks, David, and thanks, Anthony. Dan asked if the Stacks GitHub is still a good place to raise issues, and asked if someone could look at the issue that he created. Angel, is the Stacks GitHub still a good place?
Yep, that'd be the place where we're triaging.
Perfect. Yeah, this is the time to bring up issues that you guys have graded and want eyes on them. Sometimes we pass them eyes over, but it's always good to reprioritize when you want. All right, we are at 10. So thank you, everyone. We regularly post on X and Blue Sky when there are releases that come out. And then we also have a LinkedIn community group, the Azure Bicep users group, which was created externally. And we really appreciate all of you guys for all the contributions and support every single month. Thanks, everyone, and I'll see you all next month.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, everybody.